Everything you ever thought you knew about the glycemic index is going to be blown up in this video. So get ready. Hope you got your big girl boy pants on. Let's get ready. Let's get ready. Leg up on the chair, because that's how I sit. I'm a lady. You're gonna be seeing these because I tried to take it off and I'm using non-acetone nail polish remover, and everybody knows that stuff doesn't work. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let Me Learn Ya. And today's lesson, I don't have a potato. How do I not have a potato in my house? This is an Irish household. Somebody you know of has been a victim of what we're going to talk about today, and that is the glycemic index. Ba-ba-bum. We have a very real problem in this country besides the obvious problem that just blew up last week. What is that problem? The demonization of the mighty potato. I have heard reports from my clients, from commenters, I've heard doctors, influencers, keto YouTubers, and the usual chiropractors say the following about the beautiful and lovely potato: that it is empty calories. It basically just dumps sugar into your bloodstream, that it has hardly any nutritive value. There's no protein in it. It causes diabetes. It makes people fat. They're just overall terrible for you. And usually the cherry that they put on top of all those totally baseless statements is the potato is one of the highest foods on the glycemic index. The only thing they're correct in stating is that the potato is high on the glycemic index. And that glycemic index, which I will be referencing as GI going forward because I'm lazy, has been used for over 40 stinking years to demonize foods unjustly, such as potatoes, pasta, white rice, fruits, and certain vegetables. But what if I were to blow your tiny yet awesome minds and told you that Nutella, Snickers, ice cream, pancakes, chocolate cake, all of these foods are moderate to low GI? Do you think your doctor would approve of you shifting your diet from eating potatoes and vegetables and meat and maybe some pasta to nothing but Nutella, Snickers, ice cream, and cake? So the next time any of you are told by your doctor to eat moderate to low GI foods, you look them straight in the eye and say, okay, so nothing but ice cream and Snickers from now on? And watch their head explode. Today, you're going to learn about the origins of the glycemic index and also the 4 reasons why I think it stinks to high heaven. Stay tuned. The glycemic index was first introduced in 1981 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition by Dr. David Jenkins. This was around the time that scientists were starting to buck the whole fat and protein is the devil and carbohydrates are where it's at, and go into the new fun phase of fat and protein are king and carbs are the devil. We just keep flip-flopping. We're just going to continue to do this until the end of time. The glycemic index was originally designed for people with diabetes only. He fed 50 grams of available carbohydrates from specific foods to groups of 5 to 10 individuals pulled from a pool of a total of 36 individuals. There's going to be more on the sample sizes later, okay? But anybody who is in research or reads a lot of research, you just heard a record scratch, right? About that sample size that I just shared with you. He witnessed that blood sugar raised the most in descending order with these foods. Root vegetables. So this is when the potato, it was like, sorry, bud, your story's over.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Sugar was number 2. Pure sugar. And then vegetables. Yep, a table was created off of this data, and every culture across the globe that was non-American, that survived mostly on bread, pasta, and rice, just sighed a sigh of sadness. Since this table was created, there has been some changes. For instance, there is now an international table of GI foods, and there has been more standards put in place, such as how we rank foods. But though there is this international table, I got my hands on it, yes I did, and I noticed the same problem we have with the original glycemic index, and that is that the majority of these studies are conducted on people, on 5 to 10 people. Some of them had 20. I think the highest number I saw was 30. There's also a standardized method now for testing glycemic index in individuals that many claim is much more accurate than just using the original table, but it's not, and we'll discuss that later. Formulas have also been developed that are supposed to gauge the entire glycemic index effect of a meal, not just of food, that people claim is how the glycemic index should be used and that it's soups accurate, but it's also not, and we'll talk about that later. For anybody who is unsure what I mean by sample size, it means the number of participants in a study. It is considered a best practice to have a large or larger sample size than something like 5 to 10. Larger sample sizes provide more accurate mean values, the mean being the average data set. Larger sample sizes also help to identify outliers that could totally skew the data. Maybe I'll find some video somewhere to explain these better, and I'll insert clips. I think that's good. You just have an overall smaller margin of error if you use larger sample sizes. This table has been used for 40 years to make generalizations about eating choices to millions upon millions of individuals based on tests on 5 to 10 people. And as I mentioned, even though there has been a lot of data since that 1981 study, the researchers are still using teeny tiny samples of people to test these foods. I found a study where they actually were testing the glycemic index efficacy on 60 people. All they did was increase their number to 60. And what did they find? They found that individual blood sugar response varied so much just from eating white bread that the individual response ranged from low GI to moderate GI to high GI, just by increasing their sample to 60. To get 50 grams of available carbohydrates from rice, you need 1 cup. And that's pretty average, right? I mean, a lot of people would eat a cup of rice in their meal. But to get 50 grams of available carbohydrates from beets, you need to eat 4 cups. To get it from watermelon, 5 cups. From potatoes, 2 whole potatoes. And let's be honest, people's eating habits vary. Some people will sit down and eat 4 cups of beets. That's cool. Most people do not sit down and eat 4 cups of beets or 5 cups of watermelon or 2 whole potatoes completely independent of themselves. This is why these foods are so high on the glycemic index, because they made people eat cups and cups of them. And I know you all are shouting at me through the screen like, Lana, the glycemic load, it solves for that. It solves for the serving size. No, I have issues with that too, but that's another story for another time. These foods are nutritionally dense while being calorically and carbohydrate low, and they contain fiber, which has to be factored out when trying to get them to eat 50 grams of this food. Because of this high volume of these foods that they had to eat in the original study, it was reported that certain participants had difficulty finishing all the food they had to eat because they were only allowed 10 to 15 minutes per food item. Additionally, comparing the impact of a food on blood sugar and not taking into consideration the fiber is making this an invalid test. That's just not how people eat. They don't sit there and factor out the fiber in their food. They eat the food or not. And most individuals don't eat 2 plain potatoes by themselves unless you're on that potato diet, which apparently a lot of people are doing. The average person does not eat 2 whole potatoes by themselves, which leads me to my next point. These tests were conducted on individuals who were fasted overnight, and they ate the food completely independent on its own with nothing else. While that might make sense for something like a Snickers or a snack food, it does not make sense for things like rice and pasta and bread and potatoes, because again, there may be certain people who eat those completely on their own. Boiled pasta, sure, whatever. But most of the time, people eat those carbohydrates with fats, proteins, sauces. We know that by eating a carbohydrate food with protein, fat, or if it has fiber in it, that it can reduce the impact that carbohydrate has on your blood sugar. Specifically, protein and fat has been shown to reduce the GI of a food by anywhere from 20 to 50%. And just to drive this home, it's why the GI of a potato by itself, baked, nothing added to it, has an 85 score.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But potato chips have a 55 score. Why? Because they're fried. They have fat in them that slows down your digestion, which reduces the impact those carbohydrates have on your blood sugar. So they're demonizing these foods only if you eat them completely independent of any other food, which most people don't do. Okay. So proponents claim that anyone who makes that statement, that the glycemic index doesn't take into consideration the fact that people eat meals, just don't understand how the glycemic index is supposed to work. It's supposed to act as a tool. So you're also supposed to use, not only you're supposed to look at this table, but then you're also supposed to use a formula, a little math formula, where you plug in the GI of a food and all this other crap and you calculate your meal, your entire meal. But there's a couple problems with this. Number one, first and foremost, that's a lot of freaking math. I mean, are you going to do that every time you're planning your meal? Oh, I better pull up the glycemic index chart. I better find that food. And now I better get out my calculator and figure out what's the glycemic index of this food, only to have it be wrong 20 to 50% of the time. Because yes, researchers took that formula and tested it to see how accurate it was, and it was found to be wrong 20 to 50% of the time. That is not useful, and it is not realistic to think that that could be a normal everyday practice for people. And just to add, the people that I have seen yelling about this, that they just don't understand how to use the tool properly and this and that and the other, they are 9 times out of 10 selling either books or diet plans or products that use the glycemic index to help people lose weight. How foods are grown, stored, cooked, processed, all of this has an effect on how it's going to impact your blood sugar. A 2021 systematic review that compiled 4,000 different reports on different foods from different places across the country in an effort to assess and test the reliability of all the data that's out there on this glycemic index. And what did they find? Breads, breakfast cereals, rice, savory snack products, and regional foods had a ton of variation depending on where the research was coming from and who conducted it. They were all available in high, medium, and low GI versions. This is absolutely in line with that study that I mentioned earlier, where they included a larger sample size and found that across the individuals, bread could be considered low, high, or medium GI. The authors theorized that it was because of manufacturing differences. I think it's all kinds of things. If we're just talking about manufacturing and cooking, and we will just use the example of the mighty potato, you will see that an instant mashed potato has a GI of 84.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
While a cooked and cooled overnight potato has a GI of 49. Origin matters. Australian potatoes, for instance, have higher GI scores than those from North America, a difference of 10 points. And different varieties of potatoes have different GI scores. For instance, russet and Idaho potatoes are high GI, where a charisma style of potato is moderate to low GI. It also doesn't understand the difference between a highly processed food and a whole food. It compares foods like Snickers and ice cream, which typically have high amounts of fat or protein mixed in with them, that reduce the glycemic response, and therefore makes a whole food look bad because that whole food doesn't have that protein or fat mixed in, because you usually eat that carbohydrate, that whole food, with something that has protein or fat in it. Then we have issues and variations of labs and methodology and the reporting from there. Studies have observed a lot of heterogeneity between this lab reporting a GI score and this lab reporting a GI score, and they just don't report the same GI scores for the exact same foods. There was another study that decided to test this and see what's going on. They not only used the standardized method of the glycemic index that is new and approved, but they made sure that individuals across labs were getting the exact same foods to study. And they found intervariability between these labs for GI scores. And why I think that happened is based on my final point in this section, which is blood sugar response is insanely individual. We now know, because we have better technology and better methods of studying humans, even though we still got a lot to learn, that blood sugar response varies from person to person. One person can eat a potato and have an insane blood sugar spike. Another person can eat that same freaking potato and it's just a moderate increase in blood sugar. There have been studies on genetically identical twins when they are given the exact same macronutrient matched, calorie matched foods at the exact same time of the day, and they have different responses to those foods, from how it impacts their triglycerides to their blood sugar, all kinds of stuff. So if twins don't even have the same response to a food, why would we think that people who aren't even related would have the same response to foods? Low glycemic response alone does not necessarily justify a health claim. I could tell you that pure lard does not impact your blood sugar at all. Does that mean that you should only eat pure lard? Is it a health food? Does it promote health? No. Low glycemic index and low glycemic foods can be very energy dense, very high in fat, high in sugar, high in salt. And those fats and proteins in those foods are what can diminish that glycemic response. And while low GI and GL foods can be high in calories, fat, sugar, salt, protein, high GI foods can be nutrient dense, full of nutrients and fiber and all kinds of stuff, and part of a healthy dietary pattern, such as carrots, parsnips, potatoes, pasta, rice. So one could take this information from the glycemic index and interpret it as Snickers equals healthy, potato equals bad. Healthy is contextual, number one, and number two, it's individual. You can't isolate health to one factor, and that's what the glycemic index does. It makes blood sugar the only thing you should focus on with regards to your health, and that's cock-a-diddle-doo-doo. The only times any benefit has been proven regarding the glycemic index diet, the benefits reported were minimal, which doesn't seem worth it to me if you are somebody who does not even have diabetes and you have been avoiding potatoes this whole time because of that table. You have learned that blood sugar is highly individual. It depends on your unique biochemical makeup, how your digestive system works. It depends on your microbiome, all kinds of stuff. And how you're going to react to a food is completely different from how somebody else is going to react to that food. And therefore, some BS formulaic table that has been invented off of a tiny amount of people probably ain't going to help you much. And lastly, blood sugar alone does not determine health. The effect that a food has on blood sugar is not the only determinant of whether or not it's healthy. So what do I think about all this? If you are a person who has been diagnosed with diabetes, you should not be using a generic table to dictate what you eat. You should get a continuous glucose monitor so that you can measure your unique responses to foods and work with a dietitian to create a diet plan that promotes health in you as an individual. So overall, I do not support using the glycemic index. I'm sure a lot of you are asking about the glycemic load. I will make a follow-up video about why I think the glycemic load is flawed. If you need a little extra help, you can also click the links in the description below where you can head to my website and download completely for free some handouts that will teach you some tips and tricks about how to stay full and manage your blood sugar by designing your meals a certain way and also your snacks. And also some sample recipes. Share this with your friends and family members if they haven't eaten potatoes in 30 years. And as somebody else pointed out on one of my TikToks, think about Lord of the Rings. Who was pro-potato in that movie? Thank you so much for watching. As always, leave your comments below. I love reading your comments. And let me know if there's anything else you want me to debunk, because I love debunking things. It's super fun. I think I'm just gonna randomly pick things and debunk them. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! It was first introduced in 1981 in the American Journal of Clinical. That's good. That's gonna get me canceled. So anxious. Cheetah's anxious? I knew I liked cheetahs. Okay. Today you're going to learn about the origins of the... Or fundamentally... Today you're going to learn... I'm just going to keep saying words and see if they make sense. Yeah, this is going to be a long one. Hello! They're so stupid. They're so stupid. My Clarence Thomas impeachment alert just went off. Ugh. Cheetah's so fast. I don't know why a cheetah's so fast. Do you know why a cheetah's so fast? You think you're so smart? Why are I wonder if my neighbor's dog died. It hasn't barked this whole time. What day is it? Look at my horrible nails. I don't care. This is why I don't paint my nails. I hate it.